Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 68. Last week we spoke with Colin Mason, who was looking at veterinary investigation and such like, and a lot of different words that I didn't understand. But today, I've obviously been traveling a lot with the podcast lately. I say traveling, I'm still in my bedroom at home, but recording on Zoom with folk from all over the world. And today we have two ladies paving the way of the agricultural industry for themselves and those behind them. Today we have Tara and Natalie, and I'm going to try get the surnames correct. If I don't get it right, I'm sorry. Tara van der Dussen and Natalie Kovarik. Is that correct?
Yes, that was great.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Look at that. I managed to actually get it right for once. So, ladies, if you want to say hello to everyone.
Before we get on into another excellent episode of the R2Kast, I would just like to thank the sponsor for the show today, The Scottish Farmer, a weekly magazine highlighting everything you need to know regarding the Scottish agricultural industry, whether it's breaking news, events happening in the sector, market reports, classified ads, or just wholesome stories happening in the industry. The Scottish Farmer's got it for you.
Do you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Natalie Kovarik. Well, you actually, my married name is Czech, so I thought for sure you'd probably get it because it's more over your way than it is over my way. But my husband and I, we ranch in central Nebraska, which is, for anyone who's not familiar with the territory of the states, it is kind of right in the middle of the United States, and we're kind of right in the middle of Nebraska. So we have a livestock operation. We ranch. So we have beef cattle, and we're pretty heavier on that side. We do minimal farming. And along with that, I share online. So Tara?
Yeah, so I'm Tara van der Dussen. I'm a fifth generation dairy farmer. I now dairy farm with my husband and our two girls and my husband's entire family. And we dairy farm here in eastern New Mexico. We do some crops, but our primary is dairy farming as well. So both Natalie and I are obviously heavily involved in cattle, just in different ways. My role on the dairy is I actually work as an environmental consultant for dairies throughout New Mexico, helping farmers with permitting, regulations, just all things like in the regulatory field for water, manure, and soil. And then I, like Natalie, also share online. And in the last year, Natalie and I have started our new business together called ElevateAg.
Looking forward to getting into ElevateAg quite soon. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you're probably noticing that Tara and Natalie are a wee bit ahead of me equipment-wise, with their fancy mics and their fancy headphones, whereas I sit here with my iPad sat on top of a Hoover box. There's levels to this podcasting game, and as Tara said, they're about ElevateAg. They have their own podcast, which we will cover as well. So everyone that listens, guys, quite like hearing about the farms and sort of what sort of numbers are being ran, that sort of thing. Could you tell us the sort of breeds you're running? Obviously, one's dairy, one's beef, and maybe the sort of numbers of cattle that you have on the ranches.
Yeah, so our operation is a little diversified. My husband loves cows, and while we both grew up in agriculture, our operation is technically first generation. So when he graduated from what you guys would call university, he came back to the operation and kind of really had to build it from scratch himself. His dad had maintained like a small herd on the side, but both of his parents weren't in production agriculture, especially from a like income standpoint. So to answer your question, to kind of build our operation, he had to be involved in a lot of different areas. So the heart of our operation is what we call a cow-calf operation, and that's kind of what he started with. But we've also added on, we do backgrounding, which for anyone, I guess I don't know for sure how well like terms correlate, but that is basically kind of an intermediate stage between the cow-calf and before they hit the feedlot. So we'll do like a finishing on them, not to the full point, but we finish from the sale barn. So technically the feedlot buys them. We do the small finishing, and then the feedlot will accept them once they hit a certain point. So we're involved in the backgrounding. We also have an AI business. My husband does custom AIing, which is artificial insemination. And then we recently added what we call seed stocker registered here in the state. So we have a small but mighty and growing registered Angus herd that we're adding to our official Cabot Cattle Company umbrella.
Yeah, I was reading a bit about that today. It's obviously, as a Scotsman, It's a good one to hear. I'm going to guess, or not guess. I'm going to say what we would know as backgrounding from your explanation is we would call it store. We would sell store, so we would rear to a certain extent. We would then sell to someone else who can fully finish them. And Tara, could you tell us a bit about the enterprise at home for yourself?
Yeah. So I grew up on a dairy farm here, also in Eastern New Mexico. Daniel's family and my family were kind of like next door neighbor dairy farmers. So grew up in Eastern New Mexico my whole life. And went away to college at the University of Arizona to get my degree in environmental science. Obviously moved back when I married my husband, and we dairy farm on 4 dairy farms. So it's all like one family farm, but there are 4 barns. And my husband is one of 6 boys. 5 of the 6 boys are involved in the dairy. So there is a lot of us all on the dairy. And each one of them has their own role and own barn that they kind of manage, an area that they manage. So it works out actually really, really well with them working together along with my father-in-law. And as you know, I mentioned, my job is just kind of a little bit different. Like I'm not doing the day-to-day management of the dairy farm with my husband. Instead, I'm working with my clients on their permits and regulations. And so that's, I guess, kind of sums up ours. We have some field crops as well that kind of, I feel like, comes with the territory of dairy farming, but our main focus is the dairy farm.
So when you're saying barns there, are they housed all year round, or
no? Great question. Actually, no. Here in New Mexico, we have a pretty mild climate. Actually, it gets fairly hot in the summer and cool in the winter, but for the most part, it's mostly sunny days. We don't get a lot of rain, which is obviously problematic at the same time as being great. The cows love it, but we also need to grow feed for them. And so our cows are housed in open lots. So it's all open corral style barns. And so when I say barn, I just mean parlor, milking parlor. We have 4 milking parlors. And then open lot corrals for the cows year round.
And I'm going to have a little guess here. When you say mild, do you mean a slightly different temperature to what us Scots people think? So, for those of you listening, guys, we're filming on the 7th of September. So, just sort of coming to the end of summer at the minute. What sort of temperatures do you guys see throughout the year?
So we can hit triple digits. So we hit like 105 this summer, but it's for a very short, brief amount of time. Like it's a couple days. And, if you're in like Southern Arizona or even Southern New Mexico, they do a lot more misters, a lot more fans, a lot more fully covered open corrals for heat protection, obviously from the cows. It's very like short little bits. And then we drop down into the 90s. So we're in the 90s this week. I think we'll probably start hitting the 80s. I would say our biggest challenge is that in the spring and in the fall, since we're what's considered like high desert, we have the temperature swings. So it'll be pretty cool in the night and then very warm in the day. And that's actually that's probably our biggest challenge overall is those temperature swings.
And what's winter like? Is it white, or is it just cold? Is it no snow?
There's very minimal snow, and we'll get those cold snaps every now and again with some snow. Sometimes just cold snaps, not even snow. But the most part, you're getting like 50-degree days, and it's not super cold. Unlike Natalie in Nebraska.
I was just going to ask that. Could you talk to that yourself, Natalie? What it's like where you are?
Yeah, I would say Nebraska is definitely like a 4-season state. And I would say we actually probably have a decent one, season doesn't overpower the other. So we do actually have a really nice fall in Nebraska. I actually grew up in Montana, which for anyone listening that's not super familiar, that would be a little bit further west than Nebraska and also north. It would border Canada. And that definitely did not have a fall. Whereas Nebraska does have a nice fall season. So, and we're kind of just settling into that. So we'll have a nice fall. We'll also have a decent winter, not as much snowfall as I'm used to growing up in Montana, but we'll get some. It melts off pretty quickly. It doesn't stick around super long. And then we'll transition into a decent spring, and then we'll move into summer. So I would say we're a pretty strong 4-state season. or Four Seasons state. Sorry.
For sure, yeah, and as someone coming from Europe, I understand the 4 season thing. But however, as opposed to 4 seasons over the course of a year, we tend to have 4 seasons over the course of like 24 hours. We're quite good at that. I wake up like, oh, it's lovely t-shirt weather. Why is it snowing? Like
that is very much how Montana was. It was like, if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes and it'll be a different weather that you can dress for. That was how I grew up. But Nebraska, I feel like isn't as Tara kind of talked about the swings. I don't feel like it's as heavily into the swings as some places can be.
Yeah, I quite like that. If you don't like the weather now, you'll like it in 10 minutes. So as someone with very little geographical knowledge of the States, how far are you two away from each other?
We're about 14 hours apart. So Natalie is like pretty much straight north of me, right, Natalie? I feel like
I think it was like 900 miles. Which also doesn't help you guys because you're in kilometers probably. No.
It's the one thing we've stuck to for Imperial is miles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when you were talking about like triple figures, I was like, that would burn you. But
sorry, Fahrenheit triple digits, not Celsius. We're just under 1,000 miles apart. And Natalie's came down to New Mexico this summer to visit me, but I have not yet made it up to Nebraska, and I'm not planning to do so during the winter. So I will be a fair weather Nebraska visitor and come in the summer. Next summer.
You got to go in the winter. Snow's the best weather.
I absolutely hate snow.
So I guess the follow-up question would be, how did you guys come to be working together?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were like acquaintances online for years and years, like talked regularly. We were in like DM groups together and just like talked often, I would say almost daily for multiple years. And then last year in March of 2021, Natalie hosts like in-person retreats for women. And I was one of the attendees. And that was the first time we met in person, right, Natalie?
Yeah.
And then from there, actually about a year ago right now, like August of 2021, we kind of had the idea to kind of join forces and start what is ElevateAg. And it has just, snowballed into what it is now. And so it's kind of crazy that it's only been like a year and a half since we first met in real life. And yet here, like where we're at with our business.
Sorry, Natalie, on you go. Continue.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, we shared online individually for quite a while. Tara actually shared online long, even before I did. And then I feel like online's kind of like the new way, I feel like it used to be weird to meet friends online and now everyone's friends are online. But we were just acquaintances with social media and then through opportunities, of really realizing how aligned kind of some of our missions and passions were. That's when we decided to join force and kind of, instead of, working to share or advocate alone, kind of do it together.
It's funny how you say it's quite common now for friends to be online, and it used to be don't talk to the people on the internet, But I've actually this weekend I'm going to be meeting a guy that I've known for 2 years now, but I've never met him, and it's it's so cool. You've almost got like your friend groups, and then you've got your online friend groups. Like you've got this sort of two separate bits. When you said there, Natalie, Tara had been doing this a bit longer, that actually led me to a bit of a question. You used to go instead of under your name, Tara, you would go New Mexico Milkmaid, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was New Mexico Milkmaid for 6 years.
What made you change?
So I had wanted to change for a long time. I had really good reasons why I picked New Mexico Milkmaid. I just kind of wanted to protect our family. Didn't want maybe everyone to know who we were, where we lived, everything about us. And I also just didn't want to represent like the entire family farm. I wanted to be able to share more my story and my journey and not necessarily like represent our family farm. As I said, there's 5 brothers involved in the dairy, with wives, families. And I just didn't want to feel like I was speaking for anyone. So I felt like New Mexico Milkmaid kind of gave me like my own platform. But then as like time continued, I could just tell I was felt like I was outgrowing it and just needed to use like my own name. There was like times it got kind of confusing. It was like, I don't know, just like, how do you introduce yourself? How do you like talk about things? And so as we were building ElevateAg, especially when we were going to launch our own podcast, it just made more sense for me to say, like, I'm your host, Tara Vanderdusen, not like I'm your host. You may know me online as New Mexico Milkmaid. Like, there's like a lot of words in there. And so my husband was very hesitant, but I finally convinced him to jump on the bandwagon. And now, and I love it. You'll never outgrow your actual name, like you can always outgrow like a title or something. And so this just felt more me.
It's quite interesting that, because I mean, I'm in the position that my name's Wallace, but I've went under this rural to kitchen thing, and it kind of helps me in the sense that I'm a lecturer and I kind of want to keep the two separate. They end up finding it eventually, but it's quite a thought I've had. I'm like, should I just be Wallace Curry? It's really like a weird one. It's and I spoke to Andrea about this, funnily enough, quite a few weeks ago. She considered changing just to Andrea Fleming as opposed to that fit advocate, which I always struggle to say. Tara mentioned there, Natalie, about retreats. Could you talk a bit to that, Natalie?
Yeah, that was something I started back in, was it 2020 or 2021. And I actually attended, when I started sharing online, I actually attended a retreat of my own that obviously someone else was hosting. And I feel like it was very pivotal and kind of helping me realize kind of what I wanted to do online, how to monetize and make money online. And just kind of, find your footing a little bit more than just, opening up the app, spending a whole bunch of hours on it and not really understanding why or what for. And so after I had finished that retreat, I felt really called to create something that was more niche down to just serving people that was really within my industry, whether that was a woman who was, actually a farmer or rancher or kind of lived a rural lifestyle and maybe wasn't involved in production ag to the extent that we are, but still like resonated with that lifestyle or maybe grew up in it. And so I ended up launching my own retreats in 2021 and I've hosted like 8 now, which Tara came to one of my first ones as a student, but she has since, came on as an assistant coach and helped me kind of lead them throughout the rest of 2021 and 2022. So it's been a really fun thing to grow. And I'm really, really proud of my rural rooted retreats.
Could you tell us a bit more about what they actually involve? What if I was to go
of retreat, course.
If someone's going to a retreat, what could they expect?
Yeah. So they're small group or smaller-ish. We actually have a new offering that's even smaller. But about 20 women is how many I'll take. That's the max amount. And it's over 3 days. So they're pretty high intensive. You learn a lot. They're very long days. They're in a remote location. So all the women all over the US will travel to one location and will stay. I kind of pick like in this past year was a location in Texas. It was kind of like in a ranch retreat kind of venue. And so the women come in, we cover, laying groundwork for sharing online and building a business. We cover a lot of things that are more specific to, sharing online and social media, how to build social media presences. And then we also just kind of have discussions around and lead around like general entrepreneurship in general. So off of line. So things, you need to be a successful business owner. And yeah, they're a lot of fun. We bring in photographers and graphic designers for the women to have logos. And we kind of just try and really set them up. They're designed for women who are, want to share online and turn it into, take it from a side hustle to a job. And so we try and give them as many tools as they can to kind of help them make that pivot from, whether it's idea to fruition or, maybe taking it to the next level where they have been sharing and have a product or a business, but aren't really like making a full income from it.
You two are just making me think of someone that is so like you in New Zealand. And I don't know if you're aware of Philippa Cameron.
No, but I would love to be connected. I love meeting like-minded people.
Oh my God, you guys are just the same people, but in the States. Like it's the exact same. Well, not the exact same, but if you want to look her up on Instagram, her name is What's for Smoko. And if you've been to New Zealand or Australia, you'll know this. If you haven't, you won't. Smoko is basically your sort of like your morning tea, like a bite to eat here and there in the morning and in the afternoon. And Philippa's role on the 40,000 hectare farm.
Oh my
you guys
goodness.
you guys will be acres, won't you? So 100,000 essentially.
Oh wow.
Yeah. No, just a small garden.
Yeah.
Her role is she's married to probably either the main farm manager or his son, the sort of the dad and son run it together. She's involved in the farm, but her role is sort of feeding the people there as well. And she talks about everything that happens on the farm a wee bit similar to what you're talking about. And the way she's sort of pushed her brand is through writing books and sort of pushing it that way. And the reason I got in touch with Philippa originally, bearing in mind I'm from Scotland, is her book is sitting in our kitchen at my mum and dad's house, so it's obviously working, but I think you guys should check them up because you're quite similar in that sense. Tara, you mentioned about university. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of get away from my small town, get out of my small town, do something different when I went to college. So I went to the University of Arizona, which is in Southern Arizona in Tucson. And I got my degree in environmental science, and I focused in policy and law and soil chemistry. And I feel like I'm one of those like few people that has used my degree like extensively throughout my career. So doing environmental consulting work, obviously for dairy farms and agricultural sites, I used a lot of my degree. And I have loved being an environmental consultant. I've done that for the last 10 years, and it's introduced me to some incredible clients, and I've gotten to work on some really cool projects. And yeah, I it was instrumental in what ended up getting my degree, was instrumental in what I ended up actually doing with it.
And moving into sort of your role as environmental consultant aimed in the dairy industry, Tara, what's your sort of day-to-day job like in that business?
Yeah, so actually just yesterday I was out sampling, which is a majority of my job these days. We sample all of we have monitoring wells is what they're called, and they basically just monitor groundwater. So we sampled all of our monitoring wells, all of our production wells. So our production wells are standard wells that we water our crops with. And then we also sample like our lagoons. So where all of our recycled wash water from the barn goes, we sample those as well. Sample soils, and then a lot of it is the boring part of my job is reporting. So putting all of the data into reports that I have to turn into regulatory agencies. So they're, they have a permit, they have certain requirements they have to fill with meter readings, all sorts of different stuff, compiling all of those reports and turning it into the agencies. So just all things in like the permitting world, I guess, making sure they're up to date on their permit, make sure they have the right permits. So a lot of like behind a computer time, actually, just a lot of, putting together reports.
And given you guys are across the pond, as we like to say, you're talking about permits there, your sort of standards, your legislation is going to differ from ours. What sort of permits are you talking about?
Yeah, so for dairy farms, you have to have there's a lot of different, and it depends on the state, to be honest. It varies widely from state to state. Here in New Mexico, you have to have a state permit that's with our state environment department. You also, a lot of dairy farms have to have a permit through EPA. There's also like Natalie's world in the cattle ranching for, feedlots. A lot of times feedlots have to have what's called an NPDES permit. So it's a national, like a federal permit. And then there's also, again, state requirements for feedlots as well as dairy. So it really depends on what your cattle operation is like, or what your operation, whether it's farming, ranching, dairy farming, and then what state you're in, what exactly is required.
I always forget that, like, here in the UK, we've got the UK, we've then got that split up into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and England, and there's sort of devolved powers that way, but we don't sort of devolve into counties. But your states are just, countries in their own right in some ways, and it's quite funny that even though states are the size of our country, it's strange in our head to consider that. But Natalie, I actually meant to ask you earlier, but as I always do, I get waylaid by something more interesting, and that's made me say it in a horrible way, as if what I'm about to ask you about isn't interesting, and that's not what I've been.
No offense taken, none.
No, I'm glad. You mentioned Aberdeen Angus. Is there a reason you've chosen Aberdeen Angus? Because I assume that's not the only breed that you're running at home.
No, my husband, we actually, for our cow-calf operation, we will run Angus and then we'll cross them with Hereford. And so we'll get like a nice F1, like a black baldy. And that's what our commercial herd is. That's what my husband's he's in love with. He loves say heterosis, and he'll start chatting your ear off. And so that's what, he's really passionate about. As far as our registered herd and why we chose to go with, I actually grew up on a registered Hereford operation in Montana. But we chose to go with registered Angus here in Nebraska. And I think he did that for a couple of reasons. I think part of it was when he was looking for Angus bulls, he was kind of having trouble sourcing exactly what he was looking for. I think it was also kind of a geographical thing. So there wasn't, a huge long-standing family, seed stock operation in our area. So he felt like he could also serve a lot of people in this area. So a couple different reasons why we ended up going with purebred Angus for our registered operation.
And just to try and be the sort of the translator. For those
I know. Sorry.
I think it's great, and you use the correct word. Heterosis. You said what we would refer to as hybrid vigor. It's funny. I think this is one of the really fun things I enjoy, and why I've really over the last few weeks started to try and not just speak to people that are 40 miles away. Try and really see all stretches of industry across the world. Finding different terminology is great fun, and hearing how different folks say things. And one that I will continue to tell this story for some time is, you've probably heard of Joel Salatin. I had Joel on about 20 odd weeks ago, half a year ago now, and he had those sort of like chicken coops that move when the grass is finished, and so on and so forth. And when they're for the turkeys, he calls them gobbledygoes. And honestly, I've told so many folk that. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
That's hilarious.
It's a good one. It's a good one. We spoke to Tara and Natalie about university. Did you ever study in this sector at all, or no?
Yeah. So my education is actually in pharmacy. So I practiced I grew up again on a ranch, and then my parents kind of encouraged, I have 3 older sisters. They encouraged all of us to kind of get a degree outside of agriculture. I think they really wanted to make sure that if any of their daughters came back to the operation, it was kind of by choice. We weren't forced to. We had, they knew we truly wanted to be on the operation. And so I ended up getting my degree in pharmacy. And before I met my husband, I was near my family ranch, but I was not living on it. I was working as a full-time pharmacist in kind of a bigger city in Montana. And then when I met my husband is when I relocated to Nebraska. And I still actually worked part-time as a pharmacist we have a small local hospital. And I did that. So I worked off the ranch part-time, and then shared online, and then kind of the deeper I got to sharing online, and, the more Tara and I got to building ElevateAg and some of the things that came with it, I just couldn't serve everything. So I ended up kind of stepping away from pharmacy, and I no longer work. I'll fill in as needed for a pharmacist, but my day-to-day is now either on the operation or kind of doing stuff, which is oddly enough, but stuff, for online. So, sharing on Instagram or answering emails or doing something that Tara and I need to do, recording our podcast. And it's weird that that's my job, but that's my job now.
It's quite funny how you can start with one thing and then suddenly you fall into this thing, and with social media that can happen like that, as you guys have proven. You said your parents sort of said, to go and find another trade or degree somewhere else, which I always think is quite a positive and refreshing outlook from parents, because they can be like, oh well, it's 4 free people to work on the farm. But that's good. But before you did decide to go, was farming in some way, involved in the sector or working as a producer, always something that was going to be a future you saw before you went to university? No. Right. Okay.
No, I loved growing up on the ranch, and I look back and had very, fond memories, and spent, even when I wasn't living on the ranch, I still spent, I'd go out on weekends. I have 2 sisters on my ranch. And so a lot of my core family's there, and I spent a lot of time there. But no, I never envisioned living on the ranch again. I never envisioned getting my income from the ranch. I never envisioned marrying a rancher. And so it was very much a shock when I met and fell in love with my husband. But, I don't know if you believe in, what your beliefs are spiritually, but I believe in a God, and I'm always grateful that he kind of placed me back and had me come full circle to putting me on the ranch again. Because I do feel most at home kind of living in, rural setting and being on the ranch. And I feel really grateful to be kind of raising my 3 boys that way too.
It's quite interesting that, because personally I have no religious beliefs in like that, but I think that the word that really sort of resonated was the grateful part. I'm grateful for the life I've got, and a lot of people are in that position, and grateful compared to some other folks' positions, unfortunately. So I totally get the sort of the grateful side of it. But
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
This is probably a question to both of you, and I like to ask people this who are from another country, basically, because from myself, obviously, you guys are from a country. That's how we all are from. I've said that terribly, but it's quite
lost in translation.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's it. I always like to look at the impact of policy on the industry, and how do you feel? I'm not. By the way, I'm no politician. If you ask people, if people knew me, heard Wallace is asking questions about politics, it would be saying, like, who's the prime minister, because I barely know. How has policy shaped agriculture in the States? Is it quite agriculturally supporting, or what sort of situation are you guys in?
I do feel like since we're such a big country with so many states that it is kind of like hit or miss. I feel like we have our states that are very supportive of agriculture and are very like pro ag. And then we have our states that aren't. And then at the federal level, it ends up kind of being like a wash a little bit. And so I feel like Texas, I feel like is really positive for ag. I feel like a lot of our Midwest states are really positive ag. And then we have like our outliers along the coast that maybe are not always like ag is not the forefront of their minds. At the exact same time, like California is one of the largest producers of just about everything in our country. So obviously on some level it's pro ag, it's just in a different way. So I feel like it just, I know that's probably not the answer you wanted. I just feel like it's so diverse from state to state and what the offerings are for ag and what it looks like. Natalie?
Well, maybe so. Just before you say that, Natalie, it'd be interesting to hear about you guys' experiences in Nebraska, Montana, and New Mexico.
Yeah, I was going to say the state I'm in now, Nebraska, I would say is really agriculture supportive. 1 in 4 jobs, I think, in Nebraska is actually related to the industry. And I think the industry is a huge driving force of our economic value. And so I would say overall, it's very supportive of the industry. I think what is interesting when you get to different states is that you can find almost hot pockets of very urban areas. So for like Nebraska, for example, our capital is Omaha, or wait, is it Lincoln? One of the two. Basically there's two very large cities in Nebraska, Omaha and Lincoln. And other than that, I would say our state is pretty rural. And so you'll kind of get maybe differing opinions once you venture kind of to like the hearts of those urban areas. But for a mass overlook, I would say that Nebraska is very agriculture supportive. And I think that's kind of happening across the states, is that you'll maybe like for Montana, for example, kind of the same thing. I would say that Montana is very, agriculture driven, really heavily into farming. Also, ranks pretty high up, I think, in cattle as well. I think there's actually more cattle than people in Montana. But you'll definitely get larger cities that are kind of leaning towards, less, I guess, maybe supportive of the industry, but it's almost condensed in those hotter pockets of the state than it is like spread out evenly.
Yeah. And I would agree in New Mexico, like Albuquerque, Santa Fe tend to be obviously very urban and probably are less understanding of agriculture, but the rest of the state is, primarily ag is a huge piece. Oil and gas and ag are all big pieces. And I will say a lot of our legislators are really supportive. Like I think we've had every single senator and representative that currently represents New Mexico to our dairy, which I think speaks volumes of like their interest in wanting to be involved in agriculture, wanting to understand, dairy farming. And so I would say that is very true. You have those urban hot spots, and then a lot of the other states or a lot of the other counties within the state are ag focused.
You both strike me as being quite modest, but I'm probably going to test that modesty here, Tara. You said most of your state senates have been to your dairy farm. Is that maybe due to you being who you are? Oh, is it not?
Nope.
It's not, right?
Definitely not. My father-in-law has always been very, very welcoming of anyone who wants to come and view the dairy. We are located right next to an Air Force base. So my husband actually hosts once a month when new people get placed on base or moved to on base. move into our town, they try to take them around to different places within our city and our county. And our dairy is one of those places. So that way they can learn about agriculture. So no, it's a combination. I'm sure some of them have come out because of me. Some of them have come out because of a brother-in-law. I feel like there's so many of us, and we're all very involved in agriculture and politics and all sorts of different things within our state in different ways. So it's definitely been a combination, but no, something my father-in-law has believed in strongly is, the value of bringing people out to the farm and having them see something and really understanding it.
It's it's quite funny. You two are both from two states that I'm aware of, and as you've just spoken those last 2 or 3 minutes, all of my information about the states you guys are from Big Bang Theory, because Penny is from Omaha, and obviously I'm sure you know what I'm going to say here, Tara.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Albuquerque, which is hands down the coolest spelt city name on this planet.
Oh my gosh. I had to ship something to Albuquerque yesterday, and I still sing the song in my head from like elementary school of remembering how to spell it.
Well, you're going to have to sing as a song.
I am absolutely not singing the song. I am like barely have a voice as is from allergies right now. So I'm absolutely not singing.
That can be your intro jingle, Wallace.
I know.
See, you guys are so far ahead. First off, you welcome everyone with your name, which I don't think I've ever done. So people could have listened to 65 episodes and not know my name yet. A jingle, definitely not there yet either. But, we'll have to get the Albuquerque song put in there somewhere. You said there, Tara, and I'll put this to both of you again, that sort of it's not just yourself that's involved in promoting ag and promoting the farm and all that sort of thing. A lot of yous are, and what you quite often find with these social media accounts around farming is one of them loves it. They're posting a lot of things, and others like, oh my god, can you put the camera down? It's sort of getting that balance. But for both of you, both yourself, Natalie and Tara, is it the case that sort of most of the people involved in the farm or the ranch are promoting online?
No. I'll go first. So I'm the only one promoting agriculture online. The other family members are involved in other ways. Like I have a brother-in-law that sits on a lot of boards, but he doesn't necessarily actively promote on social media. So I'm the only one. So that kind of goes back to the name thing that I like wanted it to be mine and not like the farms. And so that's kind of mine. And then Natalie.
So again, going back to we're a first generation operation. So like my husband's parents aren't really involved in our ranch, and it's really just us. It's our core family. And then we do have one really amazing employee that and he actually hates the camera, so he's never online. So it's just really me and my husband, and I would say I take the lead role in sharing. He's definitely like makes appearances, and he's involved in, like, if I'll do brand partnership speaking with certain companies within the industry, he'll lend his voice because he a lot of people trust and respect my husband's opinion. And so he definitely plays a role in my social media channel, but I think it's mostly correlated probably most strongly with just myself.
It is sometimes couples and families sort of live their whole life together doing it, and some folk just it never works. That it's quite funny just seeing. So I was interested just when you'd mentioned Tara that a brother-in-law had done something, but that was more board based.
Yeah.
We've mentioned ElevateAg throughout, and if you're listening at home, or I don't think really people listen to podcasts at home. If you're listening, wherever you are, maybe you're pushing a lawnmower. Don't know why that was the choice. It's going to be coming out in November. You're probably not doing that.
Not in Nebraska.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. These guys are very much more than competition. They're big time in the podcasting world, but ElevateAg is very much more than just podcasting. Could you tell us? We've spoke about ElevateAg throughout. We've sort of touched upon it. I always like to try and leave the main thing till the end and have a chat about it there. What is ElevateAg? How did it come about, and where are we now with it?
So ElevateAg started as an online course. I think Tara and I are very much, we don't want to be gatekeepers. So we've been sharing online for a long time and have learned some mistakes and learned some valuable information. And it was something we were being asked a lot, how can we advocate the way you guys do? How can we maybe make an income the same way you guys do from online? And instead of kind of keeping that to ourselves, we're very much so about sharing. And we just found that it was going to be easier to kind of create a place to share it instead of, one-off conversations all the time like we were having. And so Tara kind of had the original idea for ElevateAg, and then I came on, and it's really what it sounds like. It's an online course. It's meant for farmers and producers, farmers, ranchers, and producers to learn how to share their story online better, really give them the tools they need to successfully create a great social presence. And then along with that, something we both believe in is kind of earning, monetary income for, what we're putting into these channels. And so we also try and teach you everything we've learned about earning an income from that. And then beyond the course is kind of where the podcast came into play. So I'll let Tara share about that if she wants to.
Yeah, we were deep in recording the course and creating all the things that relate to the course. And we quickly realized that we wanted to start a podcast, which was very out of left field. We hadn't talked about it. Natalie had said no to other podcast ideas, but we just felt like it needed more than just the course. It needed like a follow-up of like being able to have conversations with people weekly. And so the podcast has honestly become a place that we really love to hang out, engage with our community, share. And our podcast, we touch on quite a few different topics. We interview entrepreneurs in the rural Western ag space and share how they built their businesses. We share business shots, as we call them, so a little business advice for rural Western and ag entrepreneurs. And then our newest area that we've been exploring on our podcast is what we call industry news. And industry news is actually for not just people in ag, but even people outside of ag. We try to cover trending topics, just hot topics in food and agriculture. We had some policy things going on in the United States that we've covered, like all sorts of different things that just we have candid conversations about what's going on in the news, and try to give some just information to people about it. It's a candid conversation about it.
It's great to like we're doing at the minute, to meet new folk with similar but also completely different interests. This podcast is food and farming, and I have met endless amounts of people. You guys mentioned sort of that you can grow anything in California. 2 weeks ago, we released a podcast with Jason Haas of Tablas Creek. I don't know if you've heard of Tablas Creek, the world's first organic regenerative winery.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's in California, and it's quite funny. If you Google Tablas Creek, which you now know is a winery, you then go onto the homepage, and what you see is a bunch of alpacas. And I'm like, I'm interested. What's this? And go to R2Kast number 66 to find out. But yeah, it's great from that perspective, just meeting so many folk, and I learned so much from this. I'm lecturing in agriculture, and I had a master's in food security, and I learned stuff in both of those courses and everything, obviously, but you learn so much about different cultures, and it's great from that perspective. Are you guys mainly focusing to people in the States, or are you looking at anywhere?
No, we are international. We have students from abroad. I think Canada and Australia is the two main ones that we've ended up having students. So no, we got asked that if it's specific to the United States. And obviously there is differences. We are aware of that, but we feel like some of the foundation and fundamentals that we teach in the course are really relevant to anyone, anywhere, for sharing online.
And I'm not going to ask you any tips, because obviously if you're listening and you want those tips, you're going to have to sign up to ElevateAg. But is it mainly based on, you guys are mainly based on Instagram? You're not sort of on the Facebook, YouTube side, from what I understand, or maybe I'm wrong, but is it mainly based on Instagram?
So our module is mainly based on Instagram, but we brought in guest speakers that cover Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, direct to consumer beef sales. We brought in a number of experts that talk about hosting on-farm events. We brought in a girl that's all she does is like agritourism. So areas that we did not feel like we were the experts, we brought in people.
It's that sort of Richard King thing. If you're able to say, well, I'm not the best in the world at this, let's pass that on to someone who's really good at it, is always going to be better for those that are customers. And if someone was to take on an ElevateAg course, is it all online? Is there face-to-face elements, or how is that run?
Yep. So there's actually two options when you sign up. There's the option to purchase the course, which is pre-recorded modules, and you do get all the modules at once, so you can work through them at your own pace. There's actually two paths. So there's a very beginner path. Path one, we call it's for people who are very green to sharing online. We really break down some very beginning concepts, really set some beginning things you need to know to share online. And then there's path 2, which is a little bit built for someone who's maybe been sharing online, but struggling to kind of, get a very streamlined vision of what they're doing, or maybe again, earn that income that they're wanting. So there's both of those options that are different in lengths, but you sit down, it's Tara and I in a video talking to you, and kind of, we've been told it's pretty interactive. So we kind of take pride in that. It's not, something super boring to listen to. We're pretty proud of, what we put together in the modules. But there's also an option to get 3 coaching calls afterwards, which would be one-on-one not one-on-one, it's small group. So it is a Zoom coaching call with Tara and I, where you get more individualized attention. So you get to actually ask us any questions you have working through the course, or anything that, you want to know that maybe we perhaps didn't cover in the course. And so those calls were basically to, solve what you just said. Like, is it just the course and a screen I'm looking at, or can I get some interaction and have my questions answered? And so there is that small upgrade where you can purchase the 3 post. We do them, I think, like every 3 weeks for 3 in a row, right afterwards. So depending on where you're at the course, if you work through it pretty quickly, you could get a lot of your questions answered. But those are really fun too. Tara and I really enjoy having that more interaction with our students.
Yeah. And is it like, sorry, Tara, were you about to say something there? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, is like, you can say you sort of get the modules pre-recorded and you can look through them. How long could that take you? Could you do that pretty quickly, or is there a lot to go through?
Oh gosh.
There's a lot of modules, but you could choose to sit down and like just bust them all out in a week, or you can spread them out. I think most of our students kind of spread them out over, like, especially since our coaching calls are like every 3 weeks, that they kind of break it into that they try to like get 1/3 the way done before the first group coaching call, more than halfway by the second, and then wrap up by the third. Seems to be like what people are kind of doing. And then we have a Facebook community as well that carries over. So the Facebook community, the goal of the Facebook community is really to have our students even help each other. They can interact and ask each other questions, bounce ideas off each other. So we try to even have that to kind of continue it out further, of being able to still have some support and some information from others.
And is there I know ElevateAg is very much in its infancy at the minute. Is there a qualification, or is it purely a sort of a knowledge-based program?
Knowledge-based program.
Yeah. No, very good. And when did it start?
Our first launch was in March of 2022. So this year.
Yes. So we do like open close. So you can't enroll anytime. You can only enroll when like doors are open right now. We're probably going to change that in 2023, but for now, we opened doors in March, closed them in March. We opened them begin in May and let students in, and then close them in that week. And then we'll do the same thing in October. So in October, we'll open up doors. People can apply for that week, and then we'll close them. And that's mostly because of the coaching calls. Otherwise, we wouldn't, if people were joining at any random time throughout the year, we wouldn't be able to, have those scheduled coaching calls to serve people. So when we close doors, that's when we're able to kick off the group coaching calls.
And the course started the start of this year. ElevateAg as an idea came around before that, though, didn't it? It was during COVID, wasn't it? I think, is that right?
No. We started in August of 2021 was when we started, like, we need to make this course. And then we worked on it all of fall of 2021, and we filmed January 2nd. And then we launched March of like 3 months later.
Tara and I are both very much people where if we have an idea, we're pretty passionate about it and we'll pursue full steam ahead. We don't take a lot of time we kind of build our ship as we're at sea, I guess you'd say. So we're very comfortable starting and figuring it out as we go. And so, it was very quick from conception. The idea of ElevateAg to launching was very quick, but that's kind of just how both of us work. I don't think it would have gone well for personalities to do it any other way.
No.
That is absolutely rapid.
It was.
It's funny when you get sort of someone that's quite gung-ho runs into things, they quite often match themselves with someone that pulls them back, but it's really interesting to see two folk who just, let's go for it. Like, as you said, building the ship at water, what a fantastic saying, love it. What's next for ElevateAg?
I'm so glad you asked this. We're actually diving into launching a docuseries. So at the end of September, we're going to have a film crew on Tara's ranch and then their farm, and then they're traveling up to mine. And then we will meet together to kind of film our first commodity in California, which is going to be cotton. So we're really excited for this docuseries. It's really, Tara and I have, through all of, sharing individually and then sharing together, we've really, I guess, kind of honed our core passion is really sharing agriculture with those outside of it. And so this docuseries is going to be hopefully a really great way where we can touch a lot of people beyond social media with, a film that shares, how food really gets to plate and has a lot of really big conversations around agriculture and what it takes to kind of be a producer. But also while, paying homage to our history and our past of what, agriculture has looked like before us as well.
Yep.
I love that process from field to plate. I mean, look at the name of what this is, Rural to Kitchen. The whole idea was I was a chef. I worked on a farm. I'm from a farm. Masters in food security. I understand the sort of whole process, and it started during COVID when people were like buying stuff from nearby. They're like, oh, this is great. You can actually feed yourself from stuff from nearby. Yes, we've been doing it forever. You just didn't realize. So it's a great story to tell. That docu-series, is that something that people that maybe aren't in ElevateAg, can they see it, or is that specific to those involved?
No, it will be available to anyone. We hope that it will be out there in the world very soon. So stay tuned. You can learn more obviously at Elevate, our Instagram page. We'll be sharing there as things come out and when it's completed.
Excellent. Exciting times. Look forward to it. Guys, it's been great. I originally got in touch with, so I'm going to be embarrassed here, right? I have followed both of you for some time, but didn't realize you were in any way doing anything together. So you both got a message from me saying, would you like to come on the podcast? And then Tara, I think you responded, and then Natalie said, I think you've already spoke to Tara. And I was like, yeah, but that was about Tara. And then it'd be like, I was like, what?
You're like, that's an odd message.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, just don't say you don't want to come on if you don't want to come on. It was cool to manage to get you both on to chat about your joint venture, which has been really interesting. But there's two things we end every R2Kast with, and this is probably going to end up in 4 questions because there's 2 of you, obviously. The 2 questions that everyone gets asked at the end of an R2Kast is, 1, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And 2, if you had tips for folk, and you guys are perfect for this question, tips for folk coming into the industry, what would they be?
I can answer. Oh, go ahead. So where do we see ourselves in 5 years? I hope that we are like doing big things with the docuseries. I hope we're on season 4 of the docuseries. I hope we're continuing to, with the docuseries, I hope we're continuing to serve, non-ag people, helping them understand where their food comes from. And at the same time, continuing to help farmers, ranchers, producers share their story and get even more people out there reaching out to non-ag consumers to just continue to elevate ag. Natalie, you want to answer the other one?
Nope, I'm right there alongside you.
Oh, okay. Wait, what was the second question?
The second question is tips. I think my biggest tip, are you for people who want to share online? Is that what you asked?
Well, yeah, it could be that. It could be folk into farming. It could be sharing.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm the best advice to get into the industry. So I'll stick with, if you want to get into sharing online. And I would recommend just kind of being brave enough to start. I feel like at the core of a lot of successful people across the industry, whatever industry you're looking at, and the more successful they get, I feel like it kind of at the core of them, at the seed of them is a really brave heart. And so I think a lot of first steps are important. Clarity comes from action. And if you could just get started, you'll figure everything else out. So just be brave enough to start whatever it is that's placed on your heart.
Yeah.
Love it. And
well said.
Both very well said. I was very impressed, Tara, that you managed to throw ElevateAg into the sentence without even just saying it. It just ran off the tongue perfectly. I obviously, in my day job, I'm with students every day, and it's great to see the sort of their experiences and how they grow and stuff like that. And one thing that I say to all of them is just say yes. Like, you might get to the stage you get too much, you can't say yes, but that's a different story. Say yes at first, say yes, say yes, say yes. If you go through a door, you can always get out at somewhere else, but you sometimes can't get back in. So yeah, it's both good tips, and also I like to see folk that say to the 5-year question, something very similar to where they already are, because that means they're in a good place. And one tip, I don't know why I'm getting involved as if I'm the guest here, but it sort of runs on, is you guys are sort of based on a thing where you're sharing content yourself, you're working together to do so, but you're very much working in groups a lot of the time. And one of the tips I'd give anyone that's listening, if you are looking to get into things or push your way forward or learn something or whatever, try not to be the smartest one in the room. It's very easy for me because I really am, but it's a good thing to learn. So you're always going to learn from someone else, and you're also going to learn from folk that are less smart than you. So we don't have to put a title on it, but I've really enjoyed having you on. What was that? Sorry.
I was going to say, I really love that advice. That's actually something I really hold close to myself. I try not to be let the fear of being in big rooms intimidate me, and instead come from it, like you said, from that curiosity and how much more you'll grow and gain by being, quote unquote, the less intelligent one in the room. But man, it's really powerful when you can surround yourself with people who are either doing what you want to do or have advice to help you get there, So I think that I'm glad you added that into the conversation, Wallace.
It's funny you say about being in a room with a lot of folk. I mean, there's probably some kind of running joke in our office that you put me in a room, I will know everyone in 10 minutes.
That's my husband. I'm hiding in the corner and you guys have made friends. I'm like, great. Okay. Everyone's been talked to. We can leave now.
That's right. Okay. So I've basically got married to them. I know their aunties there. You've done everything. Yeah. Good way to be, meeting new folk and stuff. And everyone's got a great story as we've proven today. So I hope you two have enjoyed coming on the R2Kast. I hope it's been fun.
Yes, thank you for having us on. This was amazing. It was great talking with you.
I know one thing I did want to say was I want to say thank you for building us up so much, but I feel like you need to reflect that back on yourself, because you mentioned you had Joel Selton on. You've talked to people in multiple different continents, countries. And so I feel like you're doing pretty good. Well, so you maybe just be a little bit kinder to yourself there, because I feel like R2Kast is pretty successful in of itself without the headset and microphone. So who knows where you'll go once you get a mic in front of you.
Can you imagine once I've got a microphone and a headset? I mean, I'm basically going to be Joe Rogan.
I know. Watch out.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And what I will say to those listening, I actually had an even bigger compliment before we hit record. My voice is apparently really nice to listen to.
Yes.
But yeah, been great. Really enjoyed listening to the story, and now we've sort of made contact, try and keep in touch over Instagram and stuff like that. And maybe if I find myself out your way, I'll try and come and see one of the ranches, which will be good fun. I hope you guys listening have enjoyed. This is R2Kast number 68. I don't know who it's going to be on for number 69, because we're filming this in September. This is probably coming out in November or something like that. So I'm a wee bit ahead, and I will soon enough know who 69 is. But if you've got any ideas for folk you would like to hear coming on to podcast, please let me know. I, about 2 weeks ago from the point of recording, decided that I wanted to record a podcast with 75% of the world's countries, so that, well, actually, you can't speak to countries, people from those countries. So I've currently done 6, so I've got a bit of work to do, and that's after 68. So I worked out that I'll need to do, I think it was 1199 before I would get, if I kept going at that rate. So we're going to speed up a bit, and I've so far arranged someone from Zimbabwe, someone from Australia, and somewhere else, but I can't remember. So we're really picking up on that. My goal is to try and get Caleb Cooper, who you guys will not know, before Christmas, but he's massive in the farming sort of world here. He was with Jeremy Clarkson and Clarkson's Farm. So that's the goal, maybe for a Christmas special. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, not to worry. Everyone we get on has got a great story. So thanks very much for listening again, and we'll see you for R2Kast number 69. Natalie and Tara, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. Another R2Kast finished, another agricultural mind opened up. And I would just like to say that getting these guests on board, it does take time, and it always has done, but I've now went weekly, and with that comes even more time required. And I would just like to finally thank once more the Scottish Farmer for sponsoring the show and making that much more possible. Please be sure to get in touch if you've any ideas of people you'd like to see on the podcast, or maybe ideas you have for me presenting better, because I definitely do require that. See you in the next one.